Well, thank you. You want me to take a second now to do that?
No, let's go ahead.
Okay.
Floyd, I know, has anybody got contact with the gentleman seat that do think she'll be joining us shortly, or?
I think I will reach out and text her, see if I can get a hold of her. But I do think it's okay to start the meeting if you're comfortable with
Okay,
that.
let's go ahead and do this. So I'll call this meeting of the Arizona State Transportation
This
Board.
webinar is being recorded.
Study session beginning now. It's 9:02, so we're a little bit behind. One of the things we won't get to say too often again, Floyd, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, sir. For those in the room, please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Floyd. I appreciate that. And now will you please call the roll?
Chairman Maxwell,
Here.
Vice Chair Howard,
Present.
Board Member Elters,
Present.
Board Member Hermosillo,
Present.
Board Member Bracker,
Present.
Board Member Giles,
Present.
and Board Member Peshlikai. Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum. You may proceed.
Thank you very much. I greatly appreciate everybody. This is a full study session. We've got several different topics, but I think they're all extremely important. From the 5-year plan, obviously, is our annual obligation. And it's a lot of work, and we know it's going to occupy a lot of our next several meetings as we go through it as well. Additionally, funding concerns, and there's been a couple of meetings. Mr. Bracker and I took one with several legislators and representatives from ADOT 2 weeks ago. We know that we've got funding concerns going forward, and we'll have to keep those in mind. And then obviously, we're going to learn even more about how things work through their process and the priority lists that make it to us. So I appreciate everybody taking the time. I know some folks might have to leave early because of other obligations, and that's obviously we expect that in these kind of things. So just appreciate you being there. I want to start the meeting by welcoming. I guess I could still be once a mayor, always a mayor type thing, but Mayor John Giles, former mayor of the city of Mesa. I'd like, John, could you please give the board and the folks that are watching on this a little bit of your background, and appreciate you serving on this board for us.
Thank you. No, I'm very excited. I've always been impressed with those who serve on the ADOT board, and so it's quite an honor to be with you. A year ago, I completed 10 years of service as the mayor of Mesa. Prior to that, I practiced law for 25 years in Mesa, and that's what I'm back doing now. During my time as mayor, I was always on the MAG Regional Council and chaired the council and the Transportation Policy Committee during the development of the regional transportation plan that ultimately went to the voters for the extension of the half-cent sales tax. So I whether I wanted to or not, I was very involved in transportation issues and funding issues and planning, regional planning issues, and looking forward to being involved at the state level. So thank you for your patience with me. I'll try to be a quick study and catch up as quickly as I can.
Well, we appreciate it, sir. You've got a definite wealth of knowledge on the infrastructure base, and you're going to find, I think, many of us are like-minded in the belief that infrastructure is the backbone for our quality of life and the economy in the state, throughout the state of Arizona. And I think what you'll find most enlightening is getting to meet and know the staff. Director Todd's doing an incredible job leading the team, but they do so much with so little. It's really hard to believe that we are where we are. So I look forward to you getting to learn that even more. I want to open it up to any of the members on the board. If anybody has any opening remarks or any opening comments. All right, seeing none, we'll proceed. Floyd, can you please proceed with the announcement of Title VI Civil Rights Act?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Pursuant to Title VI of the Civil Rights Acts of 1964 and the Americans with Disability Act, the Arizona State Transportation Board and ADOT do not discriminate on the basis of race, color, national origin, or disability. No person will be excluded from participation and be denied the benefit of or be otherwise subjected to discrimination under any Arizona State Transportation Board or ADOT program or activity. To assist in measuring the public's participation, we ask each individual to please complete an online self-identification survey, and a link to that survey is shown on the agenda. By completing this voluntary survey, ADOT will be able to determine who attends its public meetings and how the department can improve participation. The survey will also help ADOT fulfill federal reporting requirements. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Floyd. As this is a study session, the board has meeting directed not to have a call to the audience. I appreciate those who are attendees that are listening to the conversation. It's going to be full impact. And I encourage you, if you do want to make a comment, either from something you hear today or something in our next agenda, our next meeting will be on February 20th in Pima County. So you can either join us in person down there. And one thing I've said throughout my tenure, I know it's not always possible for all the members to make it in person, but there's a lot to be said for that when we get out to the different communities. And if you could let me know if you're going to be coming down in person Thursday night, the Pima Association of Governments would like to host a dinner, including all of our, hopefully a lot of our regional elected officials, as well as some of the other transportation staff members. So as soon as we get a count, we will know what kind of location we need to find. So please, you can just let me know or let Floyd know, and I'll check with Floyd on what the numbers look like. But with that, I'd like to proceed to agenda item 1 with Tim Newton and Iqbal Hassan for information discussion only. It's the discussion on the 2027-2031 tentative 5-year plan.
Ready when you are, gentlemen. I think, Tim, we usually start with your financial overview, and then Iqbal will go into the plan overview, the specifics. So.
All right. Good morning, Chairman Maxwell. Good morning, board. Welcome, Mayor Giles. Good to have a new member on board. My name is Tim Newton, the new CFO here at ADOT. Before Iqbal gets to the exciting stuff, I'm going to walk the team through the financial component and how we ended up with here's the parameters for the 27 through 31 5-year program. Let me start by saying we have a fairly extensive revenue forecasting process, specifically for HERF and for RAF as well. And I just want to talk to that just for a second. That forecasting process, the risk analysis process, RAP for short. What we do is we get external economists, external transportation experts to come in. They meet with ADOT staff and our consultants, and they provide us with their growth estimates for a group of variables that we then take that, we feed it through a model that our consultant has developed. They run a Monte Carlo simulation. What comes out of that is our revenue forecasts, and those revenue forecasts, those are the parameters that we stay within as we develop the 27 through 31 program. Okay, next slide please, Karen. So just a little recap here on HERF, and I'm sorry, I'm going to look at my computer because on the screen it's really far away. But just a quick reminder of the revenues that make up HERF. Our biggest there to the right, VLT, vehicle license tax. It's now more than a third of the dollars that come in the door. Gas tax and used fuel are also big contributors. Of course, registration, and then a few other smaller buckets of revenue for HERF. Next slide, please, Karen. That is really tiny on my screen. I hope you all can see it. A little recap, just here's how that HERF bucket has changed over time. Let me draw your attention to the bottom, the green there. That's gas tax revenue. Back in the 90s, October 1990 was the last time gas tax was increased to 18 cents a gallon. And back then, gas made up 44, 45, 46% of that HERF revenue. As you can see, that's dwindled over time. Today, it barely makes 30% of our HERF revenue. On the flip side, at the top of that graph, vehicle license tax, VLT, you see back in the early 90s, it was tiny, 14, 15, maybe 16% of the total HERF bucket. And as I just mentioned on the previous slide, it's now well above a third of our revenue. The reason for that, it's kind of sort of indexed to inflation based on the cost of a vehicle, and as the price of cars go up, the vehicle license tax that we collect also goes up. Next slide, please, Karen.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Maxwell, do you hear? It looks like Mr. El-
Mr. Member Alters, do you have a question for this slide?
Just a quick comment, if I may, Mr. Chairman, to build on what Tim is highlighting, but to also point out a bit of a discrepancy between this slide and the previous one. Not a major thing, but the VLT is 34%, the gasoline is 29%, and then the all other revenue is 8%, which is slightly presented in this differently in this chart. So I think just reconciling this slide with the previous one would be a good idea. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Alters. Can we just flip back to the previous slide? Is that through 2025 or is that the 26 forecast?
Chairman Maxwell and Mr. L, is that, I can explain the difference between those two really quickly. They are the same year, 25. That one that's over time, it's been normalized. We pulled out the smart and safe funds, the marijuana revenue that we started getting 4 or 5 years ago, just so we could do that comparison over time. So you do see a little discrepancy in the percentages, just because the second one doesn't have that smart and safe funding in it.
So I've got a delay on my laptop.
Yeah,
Sorry about that.
I like the comparison, but I think to Mr. Elter's points, if we're getting the smart and safe funds in that all other revenue, we probably should show it on both slides. I do believe that's consistency, especially in this world right now. I guarantee, as we're trying to go through an election down here, if slides don't show the same thing, people start disavowing them. So if truly the smart and safe funds are part of that all revenue, I'm assuming that's what why you've got the asterisk on the second slide. But I don't think if the legislature gives us, if we change the funding completely 2 years from now, we expect the slides not to be comparable. So at some points we don't want to, one, encourage the legislature not to change things, and two, I just think it's still that those funds would fit either in their own category or in all other revenues. If it's that significant, I don't think it's as significant to make it its own category. Just my opinion. I'll leave that up to you to discuss and get direction from the director. But I do think when people read it, if they see slides that show different numbers, they start questioning the validity of both slides.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Maxwell. We'll take that and see if we can incorporate it into the second slide, because I do think that second slide is valuable to show the decline in the gas tax portion of the pie and the increase in the VLT portion. We'll factor the smart and safe in there.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so enough of the history. Let's look at the forecast here for the next 5 years through the end of the 2031 program. The good news is that we expect to surpass the $2 billion revenue mark in HERF by 2030. The bad news is that $2 billion doesn't buy what it used to buy. Some of you know this, some of you don't, so let me just do a quick recap. I mentioned our RAP process and our panel of experts weighing in on a number of variables. Those variables that they weigh in on are personal income growth, population growth, non-farm employment, and then gas and diesel tax growth. And what we found over the years is they have a very strong correlation to HERF revenue. And at this year's RAP session, the economists, I guess the general consensus was they were all a little bit uncertain of the future. What kind of impact will tariffs have? What kind of impact will immigration policy have? That kind of thing. And what we saw was the most recent RAP panel was just a little less optimistic than the previous panel. They did have, and that was really just kind of short term. Most of those factors they had down in the short term and then creeping back up in the long term to where they were the year before.
Somebody raised their hand. Oh, no, keep going.
Okay. Next slide, please, Karen. So what did that do to our forecasts for HERF revenue? You see the first column there, that's our September 24 official HERF forecast from 26 through 31, and then the most recent forecast from last year, September 25, and that's from 26 through 31 as well. As you can see, that sort of lack of optimism, at least in the short term, the impact to the forecast is about $678 million from this year through 2031. That compound growth rate you see there at the bottom of 2.2%, that's pretty low. Historically, we've seen that close to 3%, on occasion up to 3.5%. So that is HERF in a nutshell. Next slide is RAF. I'll just speak to those factors that contribute to RAF revenue. And as Mr. Mayor Giles mentioned, Prop 479, that's where these dollars are coming from starting this month. The half-cent sales tax in Maricopa County. The biggest slice of the RAF pie there you see is retail sales. Well over 50% of the total RAF revenue is coming in from retail. Contracting is also a big contributor, 12.5%, restaurant and bars, and real property. And then a few other smaller contributors. Next slide, please, Karen. So our RAP panel, when they project the forecast for RAF, it's a very similar process for HERF, but rather they look at some variables that are Maricopa County specific. So some of the factors are the same. They look at population growth, they look at non-farm labor, but rather than the whole state, they look at Maricopa County. And then there's some other variables that are different. They look at airport traffic in Sky Harbor, 30-year mortgage rates. Those kind of things have all been found to have a strong correlation to RAF revenue. Nevertheless, the discussions were the same. They're uncertain. Tariffs, immigration, what's going to happen. But they were a little more optimistic than they were. They were a little more optimistic in Maricopa County than they were statewide. Still, they have the RAF revenue sort of plateauing there at a 5% growth rate in the next 4 or 5 years. Oh, well, I'm sorry. Let me just go back to 26 because that looks weird on the graph, right? There's two different colors. That sort of teal at the bottom there, that represents the end of Prop 400 revenues, and then the purple at the top signifies, hey, we're now starting to collect 479 revenues. So that's why the distinction in there. We have collected, I think, $79 of Prop 479 funds. Somebody was an early payer. I'm sure it's going to ramp up significantly this month. Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Member Elders.
A good question, if I may. Going back to the HERF, and in a way comparing it to RARF, but looking at the two and the projections that Tim just discussed, I heard him say the pessimism or the concern is, generally speaking, short-lived. It's for 1 year and then it tends to rebound to prior year. Yet on HERF, it's a substantial difference of 2.9 to 2.2, or rounding $700 million difference over 5 years. Any additional insight? These numbers don't reflect a short-term, at least in my mind, that is rebounding to prior year when you look at the difference of 70 million and 90 million growing to 150 million in 2031, being less in 2031 than it is in 2030. So is that a little bit of pessimism, or is that a lot of pessimism when the numbers are this large? Just kind of trying to drill down a little bit more on this number and understand it perhaps a little bit better.
Yeah, Mr. Ellis, I may have misspoken. They were certainly the economists and transportation experts we had in the room for our RAP discussion were less optimistic in the next 3, 4, and 5 years, not just not next year. So it was like 3, 4, 5 years they were I don't want to say pessimistic, but certainly less optimistic than they were in the past. And then they started to ramp up, say 2030, 2031, 2032, depending on which of the variables that they were discussing. So and they felt like Maricopa County would do better than the rest of the state in the short term. So that's kind of the difference you see in the HERF and RAF numbers. Is that helpful?
Good problem.
Okay. Yeah, it helped. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick follow-up. It does help them, and I know it's all projections and it's speculative in nature, and while I understand the likelihood of Maricopa County doing better than the rest of the state, this really reflects more than twice as better. I mean, in the September 25 official forecast, the average for Maricopa County is 5%. The average for the rest of the state is 2.2. That's less than half. And if that's what the economists feel, I can understand it. I don't know that I would agree with it, but it is what it is. Thank you.
Yes, sir. They all have their magic 8 balls.
So for clarification, Tim, are these different sets of economists that do these two different forecasts?
No, Chairman Maxwell, the same set of economists, and discussing them, it's, I don't know, the best part of 5 or 6 hours that they sit down and go through these variables. There's a lot of hashing things out, not necessarily coming to consensus. They all weigh in with their own opinion, and it's all taken into consideration. I think one other thing to point out is long-term HERF growth is around 3.5%. Long-term RAF has been 5.5 or 6. So they're kind of coming from different histories, if you will.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate the question, Chairman Elters.
Next slide, please, Karen. I forget if we covered this one or not, but my apologies. When you compare the prior forecast to the most recent.
Gotta cover every slide, man. Keep going.
Okay. Most recent forecast, the economists had us down about 175 million through 2031. All right, Karen, next slide. This is our federal revenue, a big component of the 10 to 5 year program. And as you know, The current Long-Term Authorization Act, IIJA, is coming to an end this year, 2026. What we have done historically, and again we did for this upcoming 27 through 31 program, is when we don't know what the Long-Term Authorization Act has in store, and we don't know what the feds are going to give us, we just take that last year, in this case 2026, and we hold it flat for every out year. So 27 through 31 all has that $1 billion, $1.1 billion built in of federal revenue. And then when we eventually do get that Long-Term Authorization Act, you know, we have good budgetary controls in place. We can go ahead and make the adjustments to the program at that time. Okay, Karen, next one, please. All right, that sort of that third leg of the program, if you will, is the ability to issue debt, and what kind of debt do we have planned. You will see here 27 through 31, we have HERF debt planned to the tune of about $1.2 billion, and we have GANs, that's issuing against our federal revenue, planned to around $700 million, for a total of about 1.9 built into the program. I will say that we bond against our revenues, particularly for HERF, and so as those revenue forecasts look a little less optimistic, it limits our ability to issue debt because we have less revenues to issue against. Okay, so to recap, HERF forecasts are projected down from our prior program. We've held Fed revenue flat, and our capacity to issue debt is down a little bit. So what does that look like? And Karen's got it on the screen there. We've held fiscal year 27 and 28, held them untouched. For FY 29 and 30, trimmed $200 million out of the program when compared to the 26 through 30 program, and then we held the new fifth year 2031 at $1.2 billion. Before I kick it back to Iqbal, Christine suggested that I briefly walk the board through some economic headwinds, and so I'll try to do that real quickly. This slide used to say economic headwinds, and Christine went and changed it to funding pressures, and I said, hey, is that because you see the pressure on the program? And she said, no, I just wanted to put a Freddie Mercury and David Bowie picture in your presentation. I'm like, okay. Next slide, please. So some of the pressures, inflation, of course, everything is up. Next slide, Karen. This next one is inflationary impact on some of the products that we use in our everyday business. So since 1990 through today, 1990 being the last time the gas tax was raised, you see asphalt and aggregate up more than 300%, concrete almost 250% increase, and steel at 150%. Karen, next slide. Price of vehicles is up. That, you know, at least as far as VLT revenue is concerned, that's a good thing. It's kind of saving our bacon in some ways, as we're collecting more in VLT revenue. Our next slide. This slide just shows if HERF revenue would have maintained its pace with inflation between 1990 and today, we could have potentially collected or had an additional almost $12 billion worth of HERF purchasing power had we kept pace with inflation. Next slide. Early in the presentation, you saw one of those graphics was HERF revenue over time, and that revenue was certainly going up. So this slide shows the green or the teal in the background is that revenue going up, but then the gray is, okay, now you apply inflation to it, where does that leave us? It pretty much leaves us with the same purchasing power we had back in 1990. Next slide. And that sounds okay until you realize, oh, but now we have 51% more lane miles in the state than we did back in 1990. So we're kind of trying to do more with the same purchasing power as we had back then. Not just inflation. Karen, next slide. Of course, we have today really fuel-efficient vehicles. We have electric vehicles in the fleet, hybrid vehicles, that kind of thing, and they contribute less or don't contribute at all to our gas tax revenue. So that is a concern. Next slide. This is closer to home. It just shows the number of electric vehicles registered in the state. I think we have some 25 figures that just came out, and it's close to 130,000 this year, but I'll have to double check that. Next slide. This just shows that the infrastructure, while it's not like a gas station on every corner, the infrastructure is growing to support the electric vehicles. Nationwide, we have close to 300 outlets, public-facing outlets for folks to use. One more. And this is just a wrap-up of per capita gas tax revenue. As you can see, it's diminished over time, at least in part due to the fuel efficiency of vehicles, electric cars, hybrids, that kind of thing. And one more. This is headlines from across the nation. It's the same for every state. It's the same for the Fed government because they rely on gas tax revenues as well. Okay, and I will hand it off to Iqbal to get into the good stuff.
Thank you.
Tim, before you do, I've got one question, or maybe it's more of a comment. I appreciate seeing the numbers of the percentages that go up from maybe 1990 to 2025. I think that makes our case for why we need funding changes, because it's been that long that input to the curve has been made. But I think from the standpoint of a board's understanding and explaining to the community, I'd love to see those same percentages on shorter term mantras, about 4 or 5, 5-year mantra of how much it's changed. Because our dollars, even the ones we do have, are buying less than they were 5 years ago. And sometimes people don't understand that industry has been outpacing normal inflation significantly. And I think if we had those numbers, it'd tell a little bit more of the story of the pressures that we're feeling right now as far as getting projects done.
Really good point, Chairman Maxwell. Thank you. I will take that back to the team. We'll develop some shorter term numbers. We absolutely, since COVID, we saw like how construction costs go through the roof. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right, Iqbal, welcome.
All right. Thank you, Tim. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the board. I hope you are doing well this morning. For record, my name is Iqbal Hussain. So after presenting the funding availability and the situation now, I will be presenting the recommended tentative 2027 to 2031 5-year transportation facility construction program. So I'll begin with the 5-year program development process to provide some context for where we are in developing the 2027 to 31 program. This chart shows a high-level overview of the process. It actually takes 15 months, beginning April of one year, ending in June of next year. One interesting thing to note is that we are always working in parallel. For example, this April we'll begin the next cycle, meaning FY 2028 to 32 program, before the board even approves the 2027 to 31 program in June. As shown in the first arrow in the chart, as a starting point, the current 2026 to 30 program was effective on July 1st, 2025. In August and September, our FMS team, Teams team, completed revenue forecasting for HARF, Highway User Revenue Fund, and RARF, Regional Area Road Fund, and calculated available federal aid and financial information for the 27 to 31 program. Next, you can see following the RAC, Resource Allocation Advisory Committee meeting in October, November, ADOT, MAG, and PAG each began programming the funding allocated to their regions. The goal is to finalize the tentative 2027 to 31 program in late January. Then move on to February, the board holds a study session which we are having today on the tentative program. So once approved by the board later this month, the tentative program will go out for public comment, which spans from March through mid-May. Still on this chart, in May, the board will hold a public hearing on the tentative program to review public comments and provide further feedback to ADOT. Then, based on the board's feedback, ADOT will finalize 2027 to 31 program and present to the board for approval in June. So this is the high-level overview of the 5-year program development process. Next one, please, Karen. So we cannot talk about 5-year program without talking about long-range transportation plan. So this slide will give the context for the development of the 5-year program. But I'll start with an overview of the long-range transportation plan and its influence on the 5-year program. The long-range transportation plan incorporated a recommended investment choice, or RIC, RIC, which the board officially adopted in October of 2023. The RIC instituted an investment objective structured as 78% of available funding allocated to preservation, 15% allocated to modernization, and 7% allocated to expansion. These objectives are integrated into the planning to programming process and used to identify projects for inclusion in the 5-year program. Next slide, please. Switching to performance metrics, the board's statutes require ADOT to report on various performance metrics to the board and to use this information in developing the 5-year program. Shown in this slide, the assessment of the condition of our bridges and pavements. Both are classified as the categories of good, fair, and poor. On the left side of the slide, the definitions for bridge ratings are provided. Now, a reminder we give every year is important that when we say poor rating for bridge does not mean that that structure is unsafe. We close all unsafe bridges. On the right side, it presents the definition for pavement ratings. Next slide, please. This slide presents an overview of the system's prevailing condition, current condition. The data used is the most recent available, which is from 2024. And the graph in the upper left-hand corner shows bridge conditions, which is generally favorable. As you can see, 65% are classified in good condition, maintaining a level consistent with 2024. 34% are classified in fair condition, which is a minimal increases of 0.3% from last year. And less than 1% are classified in poor condition, and that in line with the poor condition level of 2024. Reviews of the interstates as presented in the chart in the upper right-hand corner. 57% of the interstate pavement is in good condition, representing an increase of 3.7% over previous year. 41% is in fair condition, which is a decrease from 2023 and a direct correlation with the increase in good conditions road. And finally, on this graph, 1.9% is in poor condition, that indicate a decrease of 0.4% from previous year. We'll move on to the graph in the lower left-hand corner that shows the non-interstate routes within the national highway system. That includes US routes and other critical structures. The routes, 36.3% are in good condition, an increase of 4.3% over the previous year. 56.9% are in fair condition, which is a decrease of 5% from the previous year. 6.8% in poor condition, an increase of 0.7% from the previous year. Finally, the graph in the lower right corner presents the routes outside of national highway system. This group exhibits a continued decline with only 15.6% in good condition, that a decrease of 0.5% from the previous year. 73.5% are in fair condition, which is a slight decrease from the previous year in the percentage of 0.4%. And finally, 10.9% are in poor condition, an increase of 0.8% over the previous year. Now, as all of us can see, based on the condition of these two infrastructure assets, pavement condition is clearly our top priorities. Next slide, thank you. Turning now to the funding designated for the 2027 to 31 5-year program. The chart on the left illustrates the total annual availability for this period. The aggregate amount for roadway over the 5-year total is $6.76 billion. The majority of these funds are utilized within ADOT system, with the exception of approximately $500 million allocated to local and other competitive programs over the 5-year period. The pie chart next to it on the right shows the regional allocation percentages of the funding. As we can see, 50% is allocated to Greater Arizona is primarily programmed by the board. It shows in orange. The cumulative allocation to Greater Arizona across the 5-year program amounts $4.1 billion. This figure includes all sub-program funds that benefit the state collectively, and we call this sub-program group of sub-programs of the top sub-programs. The green segment shows 37% allocated to Maricopa County, which is primarily programmed by MAG, and the 5-year total amounts to $2.04 billion. Finally, 13% is allocated to Pima County, shown in teal, and is primarily programmed by PAC. And the Pima County's allocation is $612 million over the next 5-year period. Just a quick clarification here, these funds exclude legislative appropriation, congressionally directed spending, any grants, and other outside funding sources. The reason is this funding is typically designated for specific projects by the funder and is therefore considered already programmed. Next slide, please. Beginning with the Greater Arizona section, as shown in the previous slide, Greater Arizona receives 50% of the available funding, totaling $4.1 billion. These funds are programmed by the board and are primarily dedicated to the 13 counties outside of Maricopa and Pima counties. Although the Greater Arizona section is dedicated to those counties outside Maricopa and Pima counties, those counties may compete for competitive funding and have projects funded by this section. The use of the funds covered two systems, projects on the state highway system and ADOT sub-programs, and competitively awarded projects on local and other systems from the sub-program, such as the Highway Safety Improvement Plan program, Transportation Alternatives, and others. So now that we have reviewed the overall funding available for Greater Arizona section, let's talk about the projects for fiscal year 2027 through 2031. This graph shows is the representation of the amount in each fiscal year of the program. The graph also shows the amounts programmed in each of the three recommended investment choice or RIC categories. The categories are preservation in green, modernization in teal, and expansion in orange. Of the 4.1 billion available for projects in Greater Arizona between 2027 and 2031, $1.6 billion is currently programmed on projects across the state, and the remaining 2.42 billion is mostly available in out years of the program for the construction of projects that will undergo design for 27 and 28. So still on the same, the previous slide. Sorry.
I'm not trying to rush you, but keep rolling, man. Let's go.
So going back to the graph, so preservation remains the category with the major portion of funding throughout the year. All year remains oil above $466 million annual preservation goal. Modernization is on average $188 million annually for 5-year period. We see the greatest activity for modernization projects in fiscal year 2027 with $211 million program. And we can move on to the next slide. Keeping our focus on the Greater Arizona funding allocation, this overview presents how projects funding is dispersed across the board and their corresponding counties. Mr. Chair and the board members, you have been provided the project information from your respective district with the handout that we provided you earlier. This slide shows the distribution of the projects program from 50% allocation in 2027 to 31 program. As you can see in the pie chart there, a small amount of funding is programmed in Maricopa and Pima counties. These are primarily associated with safety and pavement rehabilitation project. 37% Maricopa and 13% Pima allocations are not included in this data, and we'll share with you in the next couple of slides. The table in the bottom shows the amount programmed by each year in each district. And we see large percentages in districts 5 and 6. They are related to multiple widening, bridge and pavement rehab projects in the 7 counties within these 2 districts. Next slide. This slide presents the expansion project schedule to commence or be underway in fiscal year 2027. The projects include a super elevation improvement project on I-17 from East Douglas Road to milepost 275, totaling $25.58 million. The initiation of the first year of widening construction on Route 93 and at Big Jim Wash in the amount of $50 million. Also in 2027, the second year of construction for Lion Springs on Route 260 amounting $50.5 million. The construction of a portion of SR 347 widening during the fiscal year 2027 budgeted at $86.3 million. And finally, the construction of James Ranch Road from US border to SR 80 for $20 million, and the Douglas Land Port of Entry construction for $17.5 million. Next slide, please. Moving on to fiscal year 2028, we are in the final phase of two major projects on SR 93 and SR 260, Big G Wash, a total amount of $32 million, and Lime Spring totaling $32.25 million. The next one for 2029, the expansion projects in fiscal year 2029 are on I-40, design of roadway widening project from I-17 to Country Club Drive in the amount of $12.5 million. And the final project in fiscal year 2029 is the design of northbound I-17 from milepost 298 to milepost 314 in the amount of $13.1 million. Finally, in the fiscal years 2030 and 2031, there are no expansion projects programmed. As Tim mentioned during the financial presentation, revenue forecasts are for those years are less optimistic, and because of that, we are anticipating lower revenues, which led to reduced budget levels and limited our ability to program expansion projects during those two fiscal years. Next slide. About the map dashboard, just like the previous years, we are excited to share the Trinity Program Map Dashboard, which is designed to help the board easily explore and review the projects included in the program. This dashboard allows you to filter projects by county, board district, and other geographical views. It also includes the interactive maps, project description, and a clear look at timing, funding amounts, and the funding types for each project. We will also make this dashboard available to the public during the public comment period. It will include a direct link to our ADOT website, and it will make it simple for community members to make comments, whoever wants to make the comments and submit their comments to us. Next slide. Quickly moving to Maricopa County, 37% of the total funding is allocated to this region, with programming managed primarily by MAG. And over the next 5 years, Maricopa County is slated to receive $2.04 billion. As Tim mentioned, following the passage of Proposition 479, MAG is continuing to update project schedules and cost estimates. We anticipate significant adjustment as they finalize their allocations. MAG expects to provide ADOT with definitive figures in the weeks to come. Next slide to the Pima County. Thank you. So PAG is currently awaiting the update to their previous Regional Transportation Authority or RTA HubSense sales tax, which will sunset in 2026. The two propositions, 418 and 419, will be presented for the board consideration in March of this year, and if approved, they will fund their 20-year plan. Next one is our.
Bob, before you go on, on that Pima County one, I noticed significant drop-offs of the funding currently on the slide that shows how much goes to the region. So are the 27, 28, 29 forecasts for in this plan, or the 28 through 34, including the current proposals in RTA Next, or does that not impact those numbers at all?
Mr. Chair, no, this does not include in this, the
So that
RP.
that brings a question up for me then, if it doesn't include any of them, we went, basically, there was almost $100 million drop in the amount of funding that was coming to Pima County from the first year of the plan to the second, and then it comes back up to that. Why is there such a significant drop in 27 or 28?
For the record, my name is Sabrina Grace-Donkio. I'm the MPD Programming Manager. Mr. Chair and members of the board, that drop in funding was in response to a advancement of funding in fiscal year 2025 in response to the overage of the bid received on Country Club NI-10. That funding was needed in the fiscal year 2025, and so therefore it was somewhat front-loaded, if you would like to, address it that way. And so therefore in 2027 there was that reduction to balance between the two. So therefore PAG was not over-allocated over the series of the years.
Okay, thank you very much. Good answer.
Moving on.
Let's move on to the next slide. Now we'll move on to the Airport Capital Improvement Program. ADOT Aeronautics collaborates with over 60 Arizona airports to facilitate vital infrastructure improvements. ADOT Aeronautics provides the state's required matching funds for federally funded grants award, and additionally, ADOT Aeronautics provides state, local grants and APMS grant to local airports. Let's look at the next slide on this. Let's look at the budgeted amount for the airport program. Total $178.4 million program budget is allocated across 5-year categories over the next 5 years. I'll start with the FAA match program. There are 5 programs total, so I'll start with FAA match program. This program covers half of the sponsor's required share for FAA grants, and these funds support a broad range of initiatives including design, construction, safety, security, capacity enhancement, and planning and land acquisition. The next category is state-funded development program. This funding provides state collaboration with local agencies to fund projects within their areas. Next one is a very important program, which is Airport Pavement Management System, APMS program. ADOT Aeronautics manages the design and construction administration for major maintenance projects, reducing the sponsor's responsibility to just 10% of construction cost. Then the funding for the only state-owned public use airport, Grand Canyon National Airport. The specific facility receives grants to the state-funded development program. And finally, ADOT Airport Development Program. These funds are dedicated to statewide system studies and overarching aviation projects that benefit the broader Arizona airport network. Let's go to the next slide. So what are the next steps on our 2027 to 31 program? Later this month, on February 20th, we'll bring the tentative program to the board for approval. And following that, the public comment period will run from March 2nd through May 22nd, with a public hearing on May 15th. On June, we will return to the board for a study session to review the draft program. And then June 19th, we will present the final program to the board for approval. This concludes the presentation. At this time, I will take any questions you may have.
All right, thank you, Iqbal. Appreciate the presentation. Any board members have any questions regarding the draft 5-year plan?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
It's-
go ahead, Sam.
I don't know that I have a question, I just would like to make an observation or two. And going back to the highway side of things, slide 15 specifically in Iqbal's presentation that presents the 2030 and 2031 expansion projects as being none. And I just want us to pause for a minute and think about that. No expansion projects, at least as we look today in those 2 years, at a time when we have many corridors that we've been working on for years, 30 years, for example, on US 93, more than 20 on SR 95, to name a few. Those will have seen tremendous improvements, and staff and prior boards have done their best to advance a commitment made to these corridors. They're not complete today and will not be complete as we approach 2030 and 2031, and we stare at this no expansion projects. And that really, if it holds, it would be in direct conflict, and it would undermine the long-range plan that the board adopted just in 2023 that basically said 7% of the funding would go to expansion projects, because then we would have nothing going to expansion project in conflict with our long-range plan. So it's a sobering thought or a reality, and I wanted to just pause on that for a second, at least dwell on it a little bit myself, and suggest that you do the same and think what that means overall. I named only 2 corridors. There are many others that have similar long-term commitments and needs that have not been completed, and clearly will not be completed when we have no expansion projects as we approach the 2030, 2031 years. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Member Eldridge, great point. Any other members want to make any comments?
Full project. There's funding within the
I'm
program,
going to
but not
echo
enough
his
to
sentiment.
fund
So,
an entire project.
Member Brocker, I see you came up.
I did come on.
So
It is very sobering.
available,
Like 5 million.
When you look at,
It's not.
there's not enough to actually.
But to your point, it
there's just
does
no way that you
maintain
can fund
still
growth
7%.
Okay.
if you're not funding expansion. And this is the whole economic driver of our state, is our transportation system.
I can jump in if you want.
It's challenging for me to sit here and think that I'm gonna, be serving on this board with all these great people and incredible staff. And you look at these numbers and what are the other options? And I think I need to throw that back at the director and the engineer, the state engineer. This, I know that you guys prioritize maintenance and we have to maintain what we've got. If we're not expanding, we're not growing our
Yeah.
economy.
And Director Iqbal, do either one of you want to address that?
Yeah, so, Mr. Chair, members of the board, I do want to address that. So I just want to make it clear that the 5-year program does hold true to the 7% for expansion for the recommended investment choice over the entire 5 years. It's not 7% every year, which is not what was approved in the long-range plan. I'll just hearken back, if we look back to the pavement preservation and the conditions of our pavement, and one thing that we have heard loud and clear on the listening tour is that there is huge concerns, especially in the rural communities, in regard to the pavement conditions and the deterioration. And so that is the situation we're in, where we're not even maintaining the pavement that we have, let alone have the funding availability, especially in the outer years. In regards to what Tim mentioned, we did have to reduce they reduced the revenue forecast by 200 million in, I think it was 2029 and 2030. So with that reduction, we're already reducing the pavement preservation in those years, let alone being able to expand and add additional lane miles. It's a very tough situation, absolutely.
And Director Toth, fully agree, and I think most of us understand. I think the thing we've got to think about, and again, I appreciated Tim and Greg Byers coming out and meeting with the handful of legislators. Member Bracker was there. This is the story we have to keep telling as part of improving this. I mean, the numbers are still overwhelming to most of the citizens of the state. They see those numbers that we're talking about in this budget, and they go, wow, we've got all that money. But what we forget is, as you said, those slides that you've got up now, that you pulled up the bridge and pavement conditions, tell a big piece of the story. There will be expansion probably in Phoenix still because of the 20-year Prop 479 funding. I'm hopeful for the Pima County region, but it's going to be far from a guarantee. There's everybody, all the citizens of our regions look at that deteriorating pavement and they go, why should we throw more money at it? We can't even take care of what we've got. But the fact of the matter, as we know, and the decisions we've had to make as a board, we've had to decide between pavement preservations and expansion on roadways that are coming to us with the number of lives that are impacted, if not lost. I mean, it's horrendous. We need to have a serious conversation statewide. I appreciate the director's position on that. You've heard that from boards for the last couple of years, and we've seen that in some of the responses from the governor, but we've got to get all the elected officials to understand that there is a responsibility inside the state of Arizona for infrastructure, and we need to figure out how to do it. I think that Tim's story of the declining revenues is great, but I fully agree with everything the other board members have said, and you know, if Pima County passes our regional transportation tax, we won't be in as bad a shape. The rurals are truly where I feel don't get enough, and they're some of the areas that are growing. So it's one of those ones.
So is that battery dying? Is that why you keep looking at it?
I appreciate everybody highlighting it, and I understand we can talk more.
Start
on
that
how
second
we
one
can
before
fix
you
it.
turn that one off,
and
then I'll just post them as part one and part two.
To the governor, it's a challenge.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Director.
Director Toth, you're in the process of doing the listening tour. What's the time frame on that tour, and when will the board get the results from that?
So, Mr. Chairman, Member Bracker, we are continuing the listening tour. We started in the October timeframe at the Transportation Policy Summit. We're continuing that at least through the March, April. We have things scheduled out through April. We'll start the public outreach portion of that starting in the March timeframe. And again, the listening tour really is for developing the vision of the transportation system. And I will continue reporting out just like I did at the last month's meeting in terms of what we are hearing. But overwhelmingly, we're hearing passing lanes, shoulders, safety improvements, as well as the number one priority being pavement preservation.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
Madam Director, would it be possible for the board to get an update on what you're hearing from the electeds, which is who you're reaching out to first? And the reason I'm asking for that is because we just need to be able to have information to take to the state legislators as we meet with them privately as a board. That's something that the staff can't do, but the board can do. But I believe that we can use the information that you're collecting here, because what we're seeing in all these numbers is I mean, for rural Arizona, it's a disaster.
Yes. And Chairman, Board Member Bracker, we can provide you the list of who has been in attendance, but we have had a lot of county supervisors, a lot of local elected officials attending our listening sessions across the state.
I just need to, for me to go to the legislator and make appointments and drive up to Phoenix, to be able to hand them information that says, look, we're talking to the local elected leaders, and this is what we're hearing. And I'm sure as you drive over the roads, as you visit your constituents in the district, you're seeing the same thing. And then we just need to, as a board, we need to come up with a messaging messaging that we're all on the same footing on as we take it to the elected, state legislators and the governor, quite honestly.
Mr. Chairman,
Member Elders.
just one additional thought, thank you. To Director Toth's point, I think we're all in agreement, and I fully support what she's saying related to preserving this system that we have, this priceless system. But to also point out to the size of the challenge that the director and staff is speaking about and aware of, and we're all aware of. Investment in pavement preservation has increased by design in the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years to reverse that trend where the fair and poor was getting worse and the good was becoming less percentage-wise. In spite of that, we see in the chart that is in front of us, in all 4 of those presentation, if I remember correctly, when Iqbal presented it, each one of them there was an increase in the poor category, and looking at the lower right hand corner, the non-interstate. If you look at that, the poor and the good are approaching the same level. We have, I think, I don't know, maybe for the first time, over 10% of the roads in that category are now in poor conditions. And I think that's when the director says that's what we're hearing from the public. I bet you that's what they're talking about, are the poor conditions that are noticed by the traveling public increasing in each of those categories. So I think we're all on the same page, and as far as doing what we must do and not losing sight of the cost to preserve the existing system, but we can't do one at the expense of the other, and the challenge is significant, and I think that's what we're all pointing to and saying. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Alters. And one thing I considered from the staff, during the presentation the other day, Greg Byers showed a sign that showed the state of the federal highway fund. And the fact of the matter was, unless there's an input, one-time input, which is what the Congress has done over the last decade or so to prop it up, it goes insolvent in 2028. So this is a situation where the federal government right now doesn't look like they're going to be coming money to help our situation. But I think it tells the story. Every level is hurting, down all the way to municipalities. I know at least down here the municipalities don't have enough funding, so everybody's got to deal with it. And I do think it's part of our responsibility as a state board, not the ADOT staff, but as the state board, to lead this conversation and get it, make sure both the electeds and in some ways the public's aware of the situation. Because I know you are doing so much with so little, and I guarantee everyone, infrastructure professionals would love to have that unlimited pot of money and you can fix it all. But that's not the reality. So I appreciate the conversation. It's something that we can't take our eye off for sure this year and probably in several years to come. All right.
Mr. Chair, I have a comment. I'll be quick.
I
think, Member Brocker, you talked about one-on-one meetings with legislators, and I think a great tool is not only a printout of these bridge and pavement conditions, but also the diminishing dollar that was provided to us by Tim as well, a side-by-side, and even the change in the gas tax and the impact. And I know they've seen it before and they've heard it before, but to see that side-by-side, that visual, and then the comments that have been made so far, as you discussed before on the listening tour, I think we need to provide them visual tools so they can gain a full understanding of where we are and where we're headed. And when we decided on the investment choices of board, we had quite a long discussion, lengthy discussion, and it included these slides. It's unfortunate, it's very scary, as Sam noted a few minutes ago, the bottom right slide, the trend that we're seeing, and that is rural Arizona, and it's bad, we all see it. Something's got to give. So I think if we just use some of these tools when we proceed to these visits, I think it'll be very helpful. That's all I have.
Thank you, Member Howard. Great comments. And that leads us right into agenda item 2. This is one I've been pushing for and asked before, and I think it kind of is going to highlight some of those tools that we need to make sure we use. So at this time, for the transportation funding methods briefing, and Tim, I know you were in your new position. It's like, all right, bring it. Tell us what options we've got. So I appreciate this briefing, and you can kick that one off, please.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Maxwell, and I agree, it dovetails nicely from the conversation the board was just having. As you said, you asked me to come to the board and present some transportation funding methods that perhaps how other states are using. And I've got that information for you here today. My team's been doing some research, gathering the data, putting it together. If something catches any of the board members' eyes, please let me know, and I'll take it back to the team. We'll do some more digging and find out more information. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's the agenda, and I know the board is pretty familiar with our current or historic funding methods. I do think it's worth spending a few minutes on those and comparing them to what other states are doing with those same traditional funding methods. And then we'll jump into, hey, what are some of these emerging funding methods that some states are using but not all states are using? And then finally I'll touch on some ways that I think there's 24 of the states that are indexing their transportation funding to inflation in one way or another. So I'll talk about that a little bit. Before I jump into the meat of the presentation, we did find 2 errors in it. One is a typo. I'll point it out when we get there. And the other one is the federal data information that we used had a mistake in it. It's an obvious mistake. We should have caught it. So we will rectify the deck and get it back out to the board after we do one more clean sweep and make sure everything else is in good shape. But I'll point out both those errors when we get there. All right, next slide, please. And so here's the historic methods. I'll just touch on them briefly. Gas tax, everyone's familiar with that. Was increased to 18 cents a gallon here in Arizona back in the 90s. It contributed $533 million to HERF in 2025. But as I mentioned earlier, it's an ever-shrinking percentage of that HERF bucket, down to 29% most recently. Every state has gas tax. The next one, used fuel or diesel. Every state also has some kind of diesel tax. We are the only state with a 2-tiered diesel tax. So we charge 18 cents a gallon for light class diesel, and then 26 cents a gallon for used fuel diesel. Let's see, it contributed $290 million to HERF revenue in 25, and that was on the sale of about 1.4 billion gallons worth of diesel in the state. Let's see, the next one, registration. Every state has registration fees. It makes up 13% of our HERF revenue today, for a total of $241 million. I'll point out right now that the latest figures I've seen from MBD is we have 130,000 registered electric vehicles, which is about 1.5% of the total registered vehicles in the state. Okay, the next one, vehicle license tax, or VLT. Every state has some kind of vehicle license tax. And I mentioned again earlier, it's kind of saving our bacon because it's somewhat indexed to inflation, makes up more than a third of our revenues today. The motor carrier fee, it's imposed on commercial vehicles with a gross weight in excess of 12,000 pounds. And every state has a motor carrier fee. The overweight fees, kind of self-explanatory. Every state has one of those, and as the name suggests, it's fees that we collect from oversized or overweight vehicle permits. And the last one of this sort of historical bucket, of course, tolls. We don't have tolls in Arizona. 35 of the other states have tolls. Next slide, please, Floyd. Okay, so this slide and the next slide, I thought I'd talk a little bit about gas tax and diesel before we get into the emerging methods. As the director rightfully pointed out, they were an eye chart and you couldn't read them. I initially thought this was going to be in person. I was going to have 11 by 17 handouts for the board. When I found out it was electronic, these slides have been kicked to the end of the deck. You can peruse them at your leisure, and rather than let you try and strain your eyes and see what's on the screen, I thought I'd just provide a quick summary. And so, of course, what is on the slide that you probably can't see is every state's gas tax from 2019 through 2023. So you just get a visual of, where are we in the mix of gas tax? And we're the fourth lowest amongst all the 50 states. Pennsylvania is at the top there with 61 cents per gallon, and Alaska at the bottom with 8 cents a gallon. When you average those out, it's about 30.5 cents per gallon. And I mentioned 24 states have their gas tax indexed to inflation in one way or another. My team did just a quick math exercise and said, what if we were to raise the gas tax to 30.5 cents a gallon, to that national average? That would generate $400 million in HERF revenue each year. Works out to about $300 million for every 10-cent increase in gas tax. Next slide, please, Floyd. So this is that same eye chart for diesel. It's got the gas tax rates for each state from 2019 through 2023. And again, it's at the end of the deck if you want to blow it up or spend some time with it. But a quick summary. Arizona ranks 32nd for diesel tax. We're tied with Kansas and Kentucky. The typo that I mentioned is this next line. So Pennsylvania does indeed have the highest diesel rate, but it's not 61 cents a gallon. It's actually 78.5 cents a gallon. Alaska does have the lowest at 8 cents per gallon. When you average it out, the average state is 33.15 cents per gallon. And the team did the same math. Well, what if we were to take our diesel and just charge the average rate of every state? It would contribute about $112 million additional dollars per year to HERF. Right, let's have a look, Floyd, at the new funding methods.
And Tim, if you said it, I missed it, but and our diesel tax is not indexed, correct?
I'm sorry, one more time, Chairman.
Our use tax is not indexed.
Correct.
Is that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so here's some of the emerging methods, and I've got some slides on each of these that we'll tackle individually, but at a high level, many states, in fact most states, have started with that first one, some kind of additional registration fee on EVs and/or hybrid vehicles. The thought process there being they don't contribute or they contribute less to the gas tax revenue, so they should pay their share. Recreational marijuana, we're kind of ahead of the curve on this one. We have about a quarter of that excise tax that's raised from the recreational marijuana coming to ADOT, or into HERF, excuse me, coming to HERF. So there's a few other states that are doing that. Now, I'll speak to that in a little bit more detail. The next one there, whatever you want to call it, BMT or RUC, it's basically a pay-as-you-go method, charging users for the miles that they drive. And there is, I think, 4 states that have an optional program right now, and a bunch more states exploring, sort of kicking the tires, if you will, on that option.
And Tim, when we go through that, or I don't know if that's for you or for some other people, it'd be good to know how they measure that. There is a legislative proposal, or not proposal, it's going to go to the ballot right now in 28 that will prohibit the use of BMT, which is a pretty broad statement. I'm talking to the legislators. What they're worried about is having, tracking devices on the vehicles. So it's something I don't know if we're going to have any. I doubt we'll be able to get them to turn that off. You never know. It's going, I think, this November. And I don't know if you have any more information, Floyd, or if you're aware of anything going on with that. But if they may eliminate that option from us completely if they go to the voters.
Yes. Yeah, I will speak to that a little bit more. I don't have a ton of information how these other states are doing it, but it's, there's options. Certainly tracking on the vehicle is an option. Most folks don't like it. There is some sort of self-reporting, like an honor system. Who knows if that's successful? And there's either stop it when you're doing your emissions and have a mileage check done, or come into the MVD when you renew your registration and have a mileage check done. There's a few options. Maybe none of them are great. The next one, EV charging stations. Basically, any public-facing charging station, taking any tax revenue collected from those charging stations and directing it to transportation. I think we have a bill floating around out there now, House Bill 2259, that's suggesting something similar. And then the last one, just a couple of states looking at this, the retail delivery fee, where the Amazons and the Uber Eats and that of the world would pay a small fee per delivery directly towards transportation. Okay, Floyd, let's jump into that first one. As I mentioned, most states have already jumped into this additional registration fee on electric vehicles and or hybrid vehicles. It's not consistent from state to state. I think, I forget the number, about 41 states already have some kind of additional registration fee on those type of vehicles. Sometimes it's a complicated fee that takes into consideration the weight and the fuel efficiency. Like the heavier the weight, the more fuel efficient, the higher the additional registration fee. Other times it's simply just a flat fee. I noticed Texas was an early adopter of this. They just have the regular registration fee and then $200 a year on top of that for electric vehicle owners. Kentucky recently got into the same kind of methodology. It's a smaller fee, $126 a year, but it's not only on electric vehicles, they also charge that same additional fee on the plug-in hybrids. So each state's going about this a little differently, but right now there's only 9 states that are not doing some kind of additional registration fee on electric vehicles. Okay, next slide please, Floyd. I mentioned we're kind of ahead of the curve on this one, so our smart and safe revenue, been around since FY '22. Since then, it's contributed 164 million to HERF, so about $40 million a year. It's only 2.3% of our HERF revenue, but it's certainly something that we're very grateful for. The orange on the map shows the states that have legalized marijuana, and the yellow, I think it's too small for me to see, but I think it's us and, no, I can't see. There's only 3 states that have directed at least part of that funding for transportation. Okay, next please, Floyd. So this is the one, sort of the pay-as-you-go. It's got many different names. Vehicle miles traveled. Basically, however many miles you travel, you pay a fee for the privilege to use the roads and bridges in the state. A mixed bag here. Of course, those ones in yellow, they actually have an optional program established today, and people can join that or not. What they typically do is have an extra fee for the EV users. So, hey, EV users, you pay this additional registration fee, or you opt into this vehicle miles traveled program, and maybe your fee will be less because you're not actually using the resources as much. And then all of the states in orange, they have some kind of pilot program going on right now with some kind of road user charge, vehicle miles traveled charge. And then those ones in the teal are heavily exploring, is that something that they want to do in their state? And to your point, Chairman Maxwell, yeah, we're going to the voters. This may be off the table for Arizona to use in the future. Okay, next one please, Floyd. Okay, so we currently have 8 states that have funds going directly to transportation from those public-facing electric vehicle charging stations. It's an interesting concept. It's kind of trying to apply the gas concept to a new technology. It does have some holes. You'll see there on the slide. One of those holes is that 80% of the charging happens at home. There's not many of us going home and filling up our ICE vehicles from our oil well in the backyard. So it's an interesting concept. Would we say no to the revenue? No, we wouldn't. But it's not widely adopted yet.
And to go to your point earlier, Tim, that you made about Representative Biasucci's bill, that's gone through. It will literally just take state tax that's already collected by the state on the property rental tax for where the charging stations, so it doesn't even catch all the charging stations, but it catches some. And that right now goes to the general fund, and his bill would divert it direct to HERF. I haven't seen the monetary, how much that would actually increase to the HERF. My guess is it's not significant. The reality, and now that I've have an EV in, or one EV in our garage, is I don't want to charge it anywhere outside of my home.
Right.
Because the costs just go through the roof. And so I agree with you. I think that's missing. If that's the point, you're missing it. So, but great summary, great slide.
Thank you, Chairman Maxwell. The last one we have here is, next slide please, Floyd. The last one we have here is we have a couple of states, Minnesota and Colorado, that have implemented a fee on retail delivery vehicles. They do it a little bit differently. In Minnesota, it's 50 cents per delivery, goes to transportation funding. They have a bunch of exemptions. Some of those are listed on the slide there. And then in Colorado, it's 28 cents per delivery goes to transportation funding. And I think their exemption is it doesn't apply to businesses with sales of less than $500,000 a year. Okay. All right, I mentioned that there's 24 states that have indexed their gas and diesel to inflation in one form or another. As you can see here, they're kind of all over the board, and some states use a mixed bag, which makes it even more complicated. The most popular one there is tied to the Consumer Price Index. So it's basically measuring inflation from a consumer's point of view. It's that increase in the price of a basket of goods, if you will. New York is the only one that said, well, we'll index to the PPI. That tracks inflation before it gets to the consumer. So they've gone that route. Targeted revenue targets are interesting. I don't know a lot, but it sounds like they're saying we expect to sell this many gallons next year, and we have a revenue target of this. What's the math? What does our gas tax and diesel tax need to be? And they change the tax accordingly. North Carolina uses population growth. The next one is interesting to me. There's 4 states that use the Highway Construction Cost Index. And I think it's really curious because it's trying to capture what are the construction costs and what's the growth in those construction costs, and let's keep the tax tied to that. In theory, that sounds good. My one concern is how do they factor in increase in lane miles to that? So as we get more lane miles, we have more work to do. Is that factored in any way? But on the surface, it seems like a pretty decent idea. The next one, which I won't claim to fully understand, my first reaction is it seems really volatile. So tying the gas tax or diesel tax to the retail or wholesale price of those, as everybody knows, they go up and down like a yo-yo. I don't know how that works operationally. If the board would like more information, we will have to dig a little bit to see how that actually works. And then the last one, one state tying their fuel tax rate to fuel efficiency. Okay, next slide, please, Floyd. Oh, next slide, please. So these are the tables that I mentioned earlier. This one is, I know no one can read it, I can't read my own, but it is basically all of the funding mechanisms that I talked about across the top of the chart, and then all the states down the side. If there's something in the box, it means that that state uses that funding method. If it's not a solid color, but like you look in the first 2 columns of gas diesel there, you see that there's some hatch colors. That means that that state has indexed that revenue source to inflation in one way or another. And then the next 2 slides are that detail I mentioned earlier about gas and diesel revenues, that comparison over a 5-year period. So that's the research we've done in a nutshell up to this point. Is there questions or more research that you would like me to go back to the team and you can dig a little deeper?
Well, first off, Tim, I want to say thank you jumping into the fire and briefing that one. That's a good synopsis of what's out there. I think there's some more that have been discussed that as we take this and talk with individuals about what's possible, we may add a couple that don't exist elsewhere, but they've been battered around in the infrastructure community regularly. So I may add a couple to your list. Any board members have any questions about anything that Tim just presented?
Chair Maxwell, I just have a quick one. Back on the 4th slide, Tim, you gave us some highlights on different impacts, and you talked about if we were to go to the average tax, what were the revenue amounts again that would be generated for the gas?
Got it. For the gas tax, if we went to the 30.5 cents per gallon, that would generate about 400 million a year extra HERF revenue.
Thank you.
Which is, as many of us remember, at the Rural Transportation Summit this year, a couple of the legislatures cited somewhere the need of between 600 million and $1 billion additional HERF revenue. So that was kind of the targets we've heard some of both on both sides of the aisle and both sides of the political spectrum. They all agree that they thought that's what needed to happen. So 400 would be a start, but it again that captures only a portion of the population paying. That's, I think, the challenge we've got with the infrastructure right now. So, any other questions?
Chairman Maxwell. I'd like to thank you for bringing the last 3 slides on this presentation. I think they're really, really critical as we begin to have this conversation on what else we can do to apply funding for transportation. Although I think our gas tax is woefully inadequate, you're going to hear the people standing up and saying, "What about them?" And they're going to be pointing out across the room. And those are the things where you can say, "Well, if we love Texas so much and we'd like to emulate them, Texas does a $200 fee per vehicle. That brings in $26 million for HERF, and just go right across the board as we do this." But that to me is the beginning of the conversation that our board needs to have. Is we're either going to go to the legislature and ask them to figure it out, or we're going to go to the legislature and say, "Look, we've talked about it, and these are the things that we think are the most successful models we've seen across the country." So thanks for pulling this stuff together. And Chairman, thanks for asking for this item on this study session.
Absolutely. Any other board members? Any questions for Tim? All right, again, thank you very much. This is just the beginning of the conversation. I said openly a lot, I want us to be a year-long conversation targeting to try to make some improvements in the coming years after that. But it's, as we all know, it's a big lift. So I appreciate all the help that staff is able to supply on this one. And we know that your limitations on what you can do outside of that, so thank you. We'll move on to item 3, the PGP peer state review, and this is obviously really important because it helps prioritize the projects that we do and don't fund and what gets worked on. So, Jose, you're back on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and the members of the board again. So last November, the board asked ADOT for a peer state review to see how our P2P process compares with others in the nation. And to answer this, ADOT conducted a literature review of project prioritization and scoring practices used by group of peer states, state duties in the nation. So the study was done by ADOT research partner, Arizona Transportation Institute, which is AZTI, that comprises 3 Arizona universities. That's good. So with that background, I will briefly share with you where ADOT aligns and share some recommendation for future opportunities to strengthen our existing P2P process. So based on the review and the findings, overall the results are encouraging. What stand out is that ADOT's P2P process demonstrates a strong balance between solid technical analysis and clear policy alignment, meaning projects are prioritized using the solid data while still reflecting the statewide priorities. Additionally, the framework itself is found to be robust, well structured, and compares well with national best practices, especially in the areas of technical scoring, policy alignment, and the district inputs. And finally, our project prioritization and the scoring practices are comparable to those used by other states. And based on this finding, as a result, the review concluded that no structural changes or major overhaul are needed to the existing process, but the review does point out that there are opportunities for improvement to further strengthen the process by refining it. So next one is, so the peer review also pointed out a few areas where small but targeted improvements could be made, and some of the targeted refinements areas that were recommended by the review are like enhanced public-facing materials, incorporation of benefit cost framing, and active transportation co-benefits. One thing is important to note that while the review saw value in these new ideas, the review also emphasized that we need more study before applying them across all P2P categories. We have very little information, but we need more study before we can act on this. So looking forward, looking ahead, ADOT plans to continue learning from our P2P states, our peer states on the P2P process, doing additional analysis in these areas. And as that work is completed, we'll incorporate those enhancements into the future P2P cycle. That's all I have for today. I will be happy to answer any question you may have.
All right, do any of the members have any questions for Dick Law? I appreciate the overall alignment. I like the fact that it looks like ADOT's fairly well positioned. I think probably what we may need to do a little bit more deeper dive on, I think what some of the board members are concerned with is what's the priority. We've talked about how safety plays in and how some of these other things. So some of it's our responsibility. We've got to dig in and just understand what's already out there about that. But do any of the board members have any other comments about either the presentation or what they would like to see in the future regarding this? Because the P2P rankings come up all the time in our discussions.
Mr. Chairman?
Member Bracker.
I understand the P2P framework and its importance in determining what gets built and when. I think we need, as a board member, I'd like to understand the process a little bit more. And I know I got a little bit of a briefing when I came on board 8 months ago, but I'm not sure if today's the day or if we need to call for another time. How is this working? And how is this working for us as board members as far as how we prioritize projects? Because it seems as though the plan is coming up from staff and these are the things that needs to get done, and there's just not a lot of room for board members to say in their districts or board members to work together for different districts and say, this is a really important piece of road, piece of infrastructure. We're hearing it from our constituents, we're hearing it from business, and we need to prioritize this.
Mr. Chairman.
Member Alters.
Thank you. Just a suggestion for Board Member Bracker. I don't know if you've had a chance to participate in the P2P process itself. When staff goes through the process annually, they invite board members. I have participated in those. I find them insightful and really helpful to understand how the staff interacts between the planning and the districts and safety. So I'm just, there are many ways to do it. I find it valuable and helpful to me to sit in those meetings and hear the discussion, understand the priorities, and understand how they deal and how they prioritize. You know, when you have more needs, then you have resources and to deal with them, how they approach it. And there's really an opportunity for a board member to ask, highlight something, have them look into it further, and get some answers. But to me, and I'm just offering my perspective, it's been really helpful and it's insightful.
Mr. Chairman,
Member Bracker.
Mr. Elters, I appreciate that, and I know you and I have had conversations when I first came on the board, and I did attend I was invited to participate in one of the districts that I oversee, because I oversee 2 different districts, and I'm sure many board members have that same situation. But I think it doesn't give me the perspective of across the state what's happening. It gave me a perspective of what's happening in this. It was the Southeast District that I was invited to, but I didn't see what was happening in the Southwest District. I didn't see what was happening in District 2, District 1, District, any of the other districts. So when I was trying
There's no reason not to invite them
learn
to
about what
all,
was happening on
every board
on
member to
roadway
every,
systems,
okay.
I only got a snapshot of what was happening in one corner of the state. So perhaps maybe and I know it's a lot more work for staff to invite more board members, and if you get a quorum, then I know that creates an issue. I'm not sure how you solve how you solve that, but personally, I would like to be invited to all districts, and because I want to learn.
So, Mr. Chair, Member Bracker, we have no problem inviting board members to all the P2P throughout the whole state. We will do that. And you don't have to worry about like posting and things like that. We will post that to make sure that people understand that there may be a quorum present, but they're there for the purpose of that discussion and not for making decisions as a body. So there's a way to do that, and we will do that. And we have invited members before to all the board meetings that have asked for it. And I was just talking with Iqbal and the director. We agree. We're just going to invite the board members from now on to all the meetings, and then you can choose the ones that you want to attend.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate that, Floyd. It's really a combination of seeing what the different challenges are in the different regions, but it's also see how the process works and how that results in the priority and what rises to the top and one doesn't. I think there's as much concern. I really appreciate the briefing, and I'm glad you brought up the fact that you wanted to add that. And what I really take away from it is the future opportunities slide. You talked about continuing to learn and also looking at enhancements. I think that's it's when we see P2P projects that don't maybe make sense to us. That's one we need to understand it from the ADOT perspective of why these are the priorities. And then when we have to go back and explain to the folks in our district that they don't understand, they look at a couple of projects and they go, how could that be a higher priority? So it's really beneficial for us and beneficial for you, for us to really understand and have a good insight on how the system works. So I appreciate this update, and I really appreciate the idea that it's a continual improvement process. So thank you. All right. Is there anything else, Director, from you or the staff that you'd like to add onto the study session or talk about?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, nothing at this time.
Okay. Thank you again for putting together. I know this was a long, big, several topic issue. We sometimes we take on specific topics. Obviously, we always have to take on the 5-year plan, but I appreciate you adding all the additional things. I know there's a lot of learning and a lot of data, and now a lot of good slides that I can go back to as well and review, so I appreciate that. Anything from any member of the board?
Chair, if I may, this is Audra. We actually just finished all of our district meetings for the next program. So let us digest this a little bit. Maybe there's something we can do to help bridge that. Because if we invite you to all the district meetings, then when we actively talk about those projects, that actually starts next year, which is for the following program. So let us think about how to bridge that 1 year that we're going to have as a gap, if that makes sense.
I think that's a great idea. Appreciate it. We're open to any recommendations that you have on how we best can do that. All right, hearing nothing else, remember, February 20th, Peter County is going to host you.
Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Brockett.
I just wanted to acknowledge, I was home the other night and I was watching my local PBS station, and we have a program in Southern Arizona called The Press Room, and Chairman Maxwell, he's smiling, went toe-to-toe with 3 members of the press, with a moderator and a studio audience. They turned was a less than a majority member vote in the audience as to whether to support the RTA Next into an 82% support. I thought Chairman Maxwell did a great job of articulating what needed to be said, and Greg stayed calm when he got some pretty interesting questions. So Ted, congratulations on that. I just want to let you know we have a star as our chair, and we can throw him out to the press anytime we need.
I appreciate that, but this campaign down here is far from over, and it will have an impact on the state plan. I mean, I try to tell everybody down here, if we don't invest in ourselves down here, then we're going to be competing with 13 other counties, 6 other districts. It's not going to be quite as easy to have priority on the roads, and that's, I know Pinal's facing it. I know they're looking at going back at some point to try to establish their regional transportation authority, and that's outside the scope of this board, but it shows that people understand the challenges we have right now on the funding for infrastructure. That's why I thought this study session in particular was really important, so I appreciate it. And that said, please let me know if you're going to be able to make it down for the Thursday night dinner. And Floyd, if you can give me a heads up on the number of members of staff. I know Michael Ortega, who is the new executive director of the FEMA Association of Governments, really wants to expand both the number of elected officials that will be here to talk to us, but also to bring out some of their staffs so that the staffs can interact and put faces sometimes to names that sometimes everything comes across. But I appreciate everybody's time today. And with that, I will officially close the study session, and thank you all, and I'll see you in a couple weeks.